whether you're going to be raising money for somebody else or you're raising money for your own deals, please focus on the buy right, the finance right, the manage right. So the first thing you need to do is to follow a framework. The very first thing that you should be doing when you're raising capital Hello and welcome. My name is Gino Barbaro, one of the co-founders of Jake and Gino. And in this week's how-to, I might have a continuation from last week. Last week, we focused on raising capital and some tips on raising capital. I didn't dive into what I'm going to dive into today is how to break it down into a beginner, an intermediate, and an expert. These three categories, there's different actions, different ideas, different thoughts, different strategies that each one of these individuals, whether you're just starting out raising capital, whether you've done a few deals, or whether you're an expert at it, they're focusing on totally different ways to raise capital. But I want you to go back, if you didn't listen to last week's lesson, listen to last week's lesson. It's a nice precursor of it. I talked about the 3-step framework for passive investing. I talked about aligning your interests. I talked about the pitch, a little bit of the brain. Right now, let's dive into, if you're starting out and trying to raise capital for your first deal, you're a beginner, what should you be doing? The very first thing that you should be doing when you're raising capital, whether you're buying a multifamily, whether you're starting a business and you're raising capital, or you're producing a film and you need to raise capital for your film, you need to learn a framework. You need to learn the business. Please do not make the mistake that so many others have made in the past 5 or 6 years. The market was running up. They're like, hey, I got friends, doctors, lawyers. I'm going to put them into this vehicle, into this multifamily thing because it's great. Yeah, it's great until the market turns and you don't know how to manage your way out of a paper bag. So the first thing you need to do is to follow a framework. Look at this vehicle that you're investing in as a business. Find operators or anyone you're going to align yourself with experience in the vehicle. What we say is learn how to buy right, finance right, and manage right. Learn the framework as a beginner. And for some of you out there who are starting out, you may say to yourself, now may not be the time to raise capital yet. I may want to do a couple of deals myself. I may want to do a duplex or a quad. And you're going to hear the gurus out there saying, oh, what are you wasting your time doing that? Remember, this is your journey. However you feel most comfortable in starting this journey is all about you, all about your relationship with money, all about your beliefs, whether they're limiting or empowering. I'm not here to tell you what the best way to do it is. All I can tell you is how Jake and I started. And for me, starting out as a beginner with Jake in larger multifamilies, I felt as if I needed a little bit of experience myself. I felt as if I needed to prove to myself that I know how to buy right, I know how to manage right, I know how to finance right. We did several deals, probably a little over 500 units before we started syndicating. Now, that's not right or wrong for any of you listening. That's what made me feel comfortable. If you're the type of learner who's a kinesthetic learner, who needs to do as they're learning, maybe raising money starting out and not operating your own deal, that might not be the right path for you. But needless to say, whether you're going to be raising money for somebody else or you're raising money for your own deals, please focus on the buy right, the finance right, the manage right. The next one, if you're a beginner, I would say join a team, especially if it's your first raise and you've never done one before. Join a team that has credibility. Join a team that's done a couple of deals. Join a team where you know, oh, wow, all I need to do here is just to raise capital. And obviously you need to do other functions, but it's a great way to learn. It's a great way to get onto a team. It's a great way to get experience. And if you're on a team, you could possibly invest some of your own money into that deal as a limited partner. So think about joining a team. Now, the next one, if you're just starting out and you're thinking of this business as a long-term business, and let me stop for a second. Newsflash, raising capital is in itself its own entity, its own business. its own living organism. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you've got the deal, and go back to what Jake and I did. We started buying deals ourselves. That is an entity or a business in and of itself. One of the reasons why we didn't get investors was we knew that we would have to manage the investors. That's a separate entity, a separate business in and of itself. So understand that when you're doing deals and you're raising money, you have the management aspect of the business, whether it's property management, asset management, taking the deal down, due diligence, whatever that looks like, exiting the deal, refinancing the deal, doing day-to-day. That's one part. The other part is the business of raising capital, the business of managing the manager, the asset management, the business of managing those investors, growing the investor base. So if and when you find the next deal, the next opportunity, you have investors lined up. So if you're considering doing it long term, in my opinion, you need to start creating content today. You need to start getting uncomfortable. Pick a viable platform that you think works best. Are you good on audio? Can you do some kind of interviews? Can you write a little ebook? Gosh, with AI right now, anybody can create content. You need to start creating content because you need to start seeing yourself, and you need to start practicing your pitch, which will help you in the intermediate and expert stages. But this is when you're starting out in the beginner stage. You're going to put out some content that looks terrible. You're going to look funny. You're going to sound funny. It's okay. Nobody's going to see it. And that's okay. But the people who will see it, you're going to send it to them. And it's going to be intentional, and you're going to learn how to become more of a thought leader in the space. So in the beginning process now, start creating some one-pagers. Start creating some kind of webinars. Start creating some kind of videos online, Instagram, as start as creating your brand. And for Jake and I, it was really cool because we created Jake and Gino back in 2016. We had already a year and a half of podcasts under our belt. We had already written a best-selling book. In 2018, we had our second live event, and we had found the syndication. It was so easy, and I'm not going to take the word, I'll take it back. It wasn't so easy, but we were able to raise $2.5 million in 48 hours. I mean, to me, that's pretty easy. I'd never done it before. And I only attribute that to being able to have created the content, to be able to have those events, to be able to have created a community, and to be able to go to that community and be able to raise the money. So start creating content. And this next step, as a beginner, talk to every single person that you know. Let them know what you're doing. Get into your phone. Start going through every single contact. Reach out to them. Let them know what you're doing. Don't wait until a deal falls in your lap and then you call that person. Guess what they're going to say? Gino, I haven't heard from you in 2 years. Now you're asking money for a deal? No. Call them up with excitement. Let them know that you're in multifamily. Let them know that you're buying right, managing right, financing right. Let them know that it's a basic human need. Let them know what's going on in your life. Let them know that if there is an opportunity, if you can reach out to them. Don't wait. Now, this next one is unfortunate, but most of it is going to be outbound in the beginning as a beginning investor. Because remember, you're starting to create content. You're probably creating a website, an Instagram handle, a YouTube page. You're needing to go outbound. You need to be, as my buddy Anthony Vicino, one of the coaches at Wheel of Our Profits, says, you need to be the hunter. This is the season where you're going out, right? You're not planting seeds. The farmer, the gatherer is planting seeds. That's easier because all of a sudden you plant those seeds and they come to fruition. The hunter's out there hunting for his meat or her meat. They're hunting for leads. This is what you need to be doing as a beginner, right? And some of the other content you can create a one-pager, create a possible website. That's a couple of content pieces that you should all have. It really starts in the branding phase. Now, if you think you're just dipping your toe and you're not really sure, maybe that might go a little too ahead of what you're trying to accomplish. But if you're going to be serious about getting into the multifamily space and you're going to get serious about raising capital, you need to create some type of brand or look or image for yourself. A simple website that you can direct potential investors, that you can direct potential realtors that you're going to speaking to, syndicators, other team members, accountants, attorneys, cost segregation people. You need to have that vision starting out. And if you're saying to yourself, I'm not ready yet, fine. If you're dealing with friends and family, you're probably not going to need that yet. Although it would look pretty cool if you had something as far as a 1 or 2 page website talking about what you're doing, possibly putting a case study up there, possibly talking about the deal you're raising money for. You need to have a substantive relationship. You could possibly put it on there, but you can't really advertise it. That's the issue part. Go back and listen to Kim Taylor's podcast that we've done. Go to syndicationattorneys.com. I'm not giving legal advice as far as how to advertise these assets and these deals, but just know that I think in the beginning stage, there's a spot right before you become an intermediate that, hey, I need to have some kind of information out there if I'm going to be taken seriously. All right. I think one of the other things before we move on to the intermediate that you need to learn as a beginner is you need to learn how to provide value for any kind of team that you're going to join, right? Most people want to raise capital. They're thinking, hey, it's easy, one and done. I want you listening to this to really, what's the word that I'm looking for? Embrace the business. Really learn the income and the expense side of the business. Really learn the asset management side of the business to be able to create budgets. So when you do join a team, you can add value from day one. And the more value that you can add, the more that you're going to get paid. So it's important to learn the asset management side of the business as well as you possibly can as a beginner to understand, does this deal even make sense? Should I be investing in this deal? Underwriting, obviously, but the asset management side is often so overlooked. So as a beginner, make sure you learn how to manage this asset from an asset management perspective. And finally, from the beginner's perspective, learn what property management looks like. Learn how to manage the manager. If you're using third-party property management, you're going to have to learn how to be able to coexist as an asset manager with the property management. Now, we've really entailed from the beginner perspective. I'm going to take a quick time out here, and afterwards, we're going to jump right into the intermediate and the expert side of what you're supposed to start doing to be raising capital. And now, let's move on to the intermediate phase. You're feeling good. You closed a couple of deals. You raised some capital. And you're saying to yourself, boy, I'm sort of glad that I listened to Gino. I took all those steps. I created the one-pager. I learned how to asset manage, worked with the property management. I feel like I'm an intermediate. I feel like I've gone through the beginner stage. I've done a couple of deals. What should I be doing now? Now is the point in your career where the idea is, should I consider leading a team? Can I be a lead sponsor in this? Do I have enough experience to do that? Only you can answer that question. But at this stage, it's all of a sudden, you need to build a brand and you need to build a story because now it's getting serious. Because hunting for leads, going out there is really hard. Outbound is very difficult at this point because all of a sudden you're starting to do more deal flow. You're starting to need more capital. And getting on phone calls all the time, although it's great, it can be very challenging and it can be very time consuming. Now is the time where you need to start having your brand speak for itself. Do you want to have the brand like a Ryan Serhant, where all of a sudden he's got such a popular brand that when he puts a listing online and it's viewed through his Instagram, it's viewed through his YouTube, it's viewed through his LinkedIn, what are the chances he's going to close the deal? They go up exponentially. And that's what I want you to think. Remember the beginner phase? You're putzing around your camera, making sure that you look good. Well, that wasn't the point. The point was just getting out there and getting reps, getting practice. Now it's time to really lean into your mission statement, lean into your core values, what they represent. It's all, focus on the investor, build a brand, and start getting out there. Create more content. Now is the time where you need a website. Now is the time to dedicate to one channel. Are you good on video? Do you like Instagram Shorts? Do you like a little bit longer form content with YouTube? Do you like to look professional on LinkedIn? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Pick one, start focusing on it. Now, this is the point also where you're saying to yourself, I've done a couple of deals. I want to get on more podcasts myself because now as an intermediate investor, you need to be getting on other shows. There's a lot of podcast hosting agencies where you pay $1,000 and they'll get you on 4 or 5 shows. And there it is again. You're not hunting for leads. You're gathering the leads. You're being the farmer because all of a sudden leads should be coming inbound because you're not reaching just 1 or 2 people at a time. A person may listen to 1,000 people may listen to this podcast and you may get 5 or 6. But where are they going? They're going to go to your socials first, and check you out on social, and then they're going to go to your website. And if they like your socials, then they're going to go to the website and they're going to sign into the website. You see how it has to be methodical and it has to be a little bit longer of a long game, not 5 or 6 years, but you see 6, 12, 18 months, this process, how long it takes. Now is the point also, should I write a book? And I would say absolutely yes. Write a book, whether it's on real estate, whether it's on investing, whatever it is, try to gear it towards your brand and the message that you're trying to deliver. You're going to get on more podcasts. You're going to become more of a thought leader. When people see, hey, you've written a book and it's on Amazon and they can buy it, it levels up your credibility. It gives you more credibility. That's the important thing. So that's what you're looking for as that intermediate. Maybe that book coincides with the brand. I would say 9 times out of 10, spend the time, write the book. And there's so many professional services out there. I've used a guy named Rob Cosberg, Bestseller Publishing. If you want me to make a connection to Rob, I would love to. He lives here in St. Augustine. He's helped me write 3 of my books. Happy Money, Happy Family, Happy Legacies, my most recent one. If you want a free copy, email me, Gino@jakeandgino.com. I'll send you a free copy. I'll show you the quality of work that his company did that really helped me out. They actually created the image on the front cover. They help me edit the book. They have ghostwriting services if you can't write the book. They'll help you even write the book. To me, it is a massive business card, and it really will get you on a lot of stages. It'll get you on a lot of podcasts, and you can even create a show based around your book. So think about that. And I think one of the last things as an intermediate investor right now, all of a sudden, from the beginner stage, you're piecing things together. You're using Google Sheets, Google Docs, you're using Microsoft Word. Now, I would absolutely say if you haven't done it in the end of the beginner stage, now is the time where you're using a CRM, whether that's HubSpot, whether you're looking at MailChimp, whether you're looking at all of these different services out there. We use the company called Cashflow Portal. Perry Zhang is a great friend. So if you want Rob Cosberg's advice, email me, Gino@jakeandgino.com. I'll put a direct connection. If you want me to connect you with Perry Zhang, who's got a company called Cashflow Portal, it's a CRM. It's basically an investment portal for capital raisers. It's a great portal. It's rather easy to use. It's rather inexpensive, and there's a lot of functionality. And I know Perry, he's always upgrading it. When you had a couple of deals, 1 or 2 deals, and not that many investors, you don't really need to invest in it. I mean, although it would look great from the beginning, but you don't need to overwhelm yourself. At this stage, you need to get a CRM. You need to get an investor kind of rhythm going on. You need to start creating content and automations and touch points for the investors that you're starting to accumulate. That's really important. And at this point, you're having now a mix, as I said, outbound versus inbound. Now the inbound, you're going to start creating the website and capturing leads there. Your book's going to help you capture leads, and the podcasts are going to help you capture leads. Now from the intermediate stage, let's jump into the professional stage. And I don't know how many deals, I don't know how much money capital raise would qualify you as an expert. To me, I think expert level, in my opinion, would be you've done a couple of full cycle deals. You've gone through the market cycle. You've not only made money in a deal, but you've increased the NOI. You haven't just made money by compressing cap rates and flipping out in a deal. No, you've gone full cycle in the deals. You've got a nice list of investors, whether that be 100, 1,000, whatever that looks like. You've been doing the business for a little while. You've gone full cycle. You have the business plan. You're really focused in on what you're trying to accomplish. You're not going out there and get the arthritis by just having capital and placing people. This is now at the point in your life where it's mostly inbound. People are going to be reading your book, watching your podcast, listening to you on YouTube. You need to be able to capture all of those leads. And I think between the end of intermediate to the beginning of the expert phase is when you need to start focusing on marketing. I don't want to say a lot, but now is the point where you have to spend thousands of dollars on a better looking website, spending money on being able to scale this business, because now all of a sudden you may have employees in between the intermediate and expert. You may have somebody helping you with investor relations. You may have somebody helping you with editing these podcasts. You may have somebody helping you with the bookkeeping on the asset management. All of a sudden it starts to get a little bit more cumbersome. It's not just Gino wheeling and dealing by himself. I need people helping me out. So I need to understand that all of a sudden this is where systems get implemented. Start reading books like Traction and start reading books like Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. Start possibly going through some of these programs. I mean, we did both of those. They're both phenomenal. They both helped us increase our business, be able to scale from, a couple hundred units to over 1,900 units. If I didn't have that training, wouldn't have been able to do it. But now, here is the interesting part when you're an expert. You start having your own events. You start creating your own mastermind. You start creating your own education company. These are questions that you need to ask yourself. Do you want to get in the business of teaching people, about multifamily and then going back to them and raising capital? I don't really feel good about that. Ironically enough, that's how the education space started back in the early 2000s. You needed to create a substantive relationship with your investors and the educators back then, the multifamily syndicators. They weren't doing it to sell education and to monetize that. They were doing it so they got to learn you. They got to know you who were as an investor. They got to be able to create a substantive relationship amongst that connection through the education. Now you may say to yourself, I want to create a mastermind group, possibly with the investors that I have. I want to create a community of like-minded people. I want to throw events year-round with my investors. That's something you can start thinking about as an expert. But remember, as you're doing this, the focus is always tending to the investors you have on your platform. You have the investors in your database. As an expert, you need to continue to nurture them. You need to continue to reach out to those investors, put out great content, put out a newsletter, possibly do monthly webinars on the deals that you have, possibly do open once a week, open calls to any investors for an hour if they want to call in and ask any questions. Now you're an expert. Now you're seen as somebody who's been doing it for a while. You've gone full cycle. They have your trust. It does get a lot easier to raise capital at this stage. But if you do not go through the progression from the beginner, starting out new, putting in the time, the effort, becoming that expert in the space, graduating to the intermediate, and then ultimately ending up with the expert, you need to continue, as Stephen Covey says, to sharpen the saw. You constantly sharpening the saw will allow you to go from that beginner to the expert. I love talking about raising capital because it is it's the propellant of the economy. Debt is the circulatory engine of the economy. But without equity, without people putting skin in the game, these deals aren't getting done. And it's so important to learn the business, to learn to become a fiduciary for your investors, and to be able to learn how to buy great deals. If you want to learn more about investing in real estate, just go to wheelbarrowprofits.com. You can learn more. You can subscribe to the podcast that we have, subscribe to the Jake and Gino Show. If you want to learn about money and happy money, go to barbaro360.com. Love to see you there. Listen, I really want to thank you all for listening to me weekly. It's an honor and a privilege to be on here sharing this stuff with you. And I want to thank you for spending a few minutes with me every week. And I will continue to do this as long as I'm here breathing. I love this, everybody. Thanks again, and I'll see you all on next week's How To. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to like and subscribe so you'll never miss another episode.